Oh, let's go to the Bluefield Cemetery. Not there.
Okay. You just click.
I just clicked to record, so that's
Are you
on
on
now. Because we can't control that remotely.
started.
Yeah, because we can't control that remotely.
Well, I'm retired.
Trying to be there.
I got 2022 copies. Yeah. Let me ask her how we can.
Yeah, like everyone's a different. That's been really interesting. What do you
Oh, Bill's here.
Oh, is that? Okay, I don't think that works. Okay. That explains it. Okay. Seems a little bit quiet. Oh, Nick was there? Complaints over in his office, and he always wears songs up. It's like a shadow. See how long it lasts for. Sorry. Wires has to do it. I don't know. You're just gonna go by. It's all. You can be on camera though.
all I wanted.
Yeah.
All summer.
Just want Pittsburgh and Denver to see your face.
Yeah, I guess so.
They're flexi by yourself.
Yeah, I guess so.
I didn't notice he was super young.
They drove him away. It's a real function.
Not a fuck. First thing that comes to mind.
No, it's, oh, you mean to keep track?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. As little as much as you want to talk, it's fine. Judges always arrive late, thinking nothing could start without them. So let me walk in.
When would be a good time to pay? Whenever I get there.
Yeah.
Just because most of the situations are right.
Alan,
Carl was I said, I'm just gonna assume that nothing's changed. There it is.
Haven't unlocked it every day.
Yeah, I mean, I figured
What?
it's
I
just
haven't
pretty
unlocked it every day.
settings.
Oh, nice. I think that the standard for like human interaction for these commissioners is kind of low. She was like, you seem like you know how to like read a conversation and like respond.
It's we're talking about like
That's a low bar. You're talking about not just that.
So the problem is,
I found that like
But what we're turning is they are just so pretty much unlikely to
Honestly, I usually do more losing.
discretion in settlements where you vacate so that the settlement reverts the same as the one that they denied. Yeah.
I really enjoyed my like paralegal interview.
Yeah.
When I was like getting the job at my old firm, and he's a part of the like, senior associate who ended up becoming a partner. Like, showed up about 5 minutes into the interview after it had already started, and just like they were like the paralegal, there were like 2 paralegals and another associate who were like sitting on chairs across from me, like talking to me, and she just like plops down on the couch where I'm on. And like puts her arm like this, and it's like, and like at some point in the interview, she like gives me a high five because like she was also a Middle Eastern, and I talked about, oh yeah, like I was gonna go into medicine, and she was like, Middle Eastern parents, right? And I was like, yeah. She's like, high five. And then she ended up becoming like my mentor there, and had me like house sit for her after like a year or so. So I think that was like the best interview experience ever.
Yeah,
Between Auburn and Roseville, or second.
I have to do one at 4.
With him.
Marty, I don't know how
Marie?
Marie. In my head, I like mixed up the
Marie.
yeah, Marie. I wish you realized I haven't done one.
Hello, and welcome to Citicom conferencing. Please enter your passcode, or just say it. Thanks. Are you the host for this conference? Say yes or no. Or, if yes, press 1. Okay, please enter the host pin. Or, thanks. Give me 1 second to add you, okay? I'm connecting you now. Press pound 8 for internet, but this call is now being recorded.
Hello? Hello, who's on the line?
That's fine.
Hi, Alan.
Judge Gill.
Zane, good to hear from you. We were trying to do a video, but the video isn't working, so you can just have audio, although we are taping this. And so we'll have it available for future law clerks.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. Anyone else on the line yet?
Elias Thomas from Denver.
Hello, Elias.
Hello.
Sarah Nolan from Denver.
I'm sorry?
Sarah Nolan from Denver.
Hi, Sarah.
Kevin from Denver, too.
Greetings, Denver.
Okay, thank you.
Kathleen from Pittsburgh is also on the phone.
You guys can move up now, since you were the first to rock out. Feel free to come on up. Nobody wants to.
I might step forward. I'm kind of half behind this thing.
We'll wait just a few more minutes since we gave out the contact info just a few minutes ago to some folks. Bob, you want a glass of water before we start?
I'm fine. Thanks, sure.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Judge Simonson here.
Greetings, Judge Simonton. Tom Stock here.
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Good. We're awaiting for late arrivals and about to get underway.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
I feel like I'm very close to it. I can,
No, you're fine. Now, if everybody was back that way, I'd be scared.
as long as you're comfortable.
Well, welcome to everybody. We're very pleased to have Robert Bailey with us. Robert is a miner from Princeton, West Virginia, a retired miner, coal miner. He was born in 1953, and he tells me in the Bluefield Hospital, which was called the Sanitarium back then. Odd title, but he started mining in 1972 and retired in 2009. Lives in Princeton. I've had the pleasure of visiting his house because I've looked at some of his collection of mining implements, and he pointed out that I was missing some pieces, and so he gave me some, and I'm very pleased. So we share the same interest in collecting old mining implements. So welcome to all of you. It's nice to see our interns, law clerks, legal assistants, some, and then from the Department of Labor, a lot of law clerks, right, and others. And we have the pleasure of Judge Bill Caldwell being here. On the phone, we have folks from our Pittsburgh and Denver office and some locals who are listening in. We're videoing this so for future use with some of our folks. Many of you know we try every couple of years to take a mine tour. Hi, Stacy, come on in. We got seats up here and anywhere you like. You know, some people sit in the back pew in church, some take the front pew.
I'll squeeze right here.
And so we're very pleased that the folks can come here from, again, from the Department of Labor, OALJ. And you all do, I guess, a lot of other areas that we don't do. We don't do black lung cases here, but you all do. And I did those for a number of years, both as a solicitor and out in Denver, in 12-state region, and as a judge I heard those too. So a rather difficult area to learn, although once you learn it, it's made it a lot easier. And an area I was very interested in. So again, welcome. Thanks for coming over. Glad you could be here. Judge McCarthy's here also, and some folks behind the pillars. And again, thanks. Well, Robert, I will let you. You have some handouts, don't you? Mm-hmm. Why don't we give those out first before you talk, and then we'll. You can stand or sit as you wish. Now, Bob is not a public speaker, as you might have guessed, and he's a little nervous, I'm sure. He spoke. I've known him for about 5 years. He spoke a few months back, and I heard him just talking about his life and what he's gone through as a coal miner, and I thought it'd be great to have him come up and talk with you all. When I started saying earlier, when we've gone to mine tours, the operators will often buttonhole us and talk with us about their perspectives, and we appreciate that. It's not often, except in a hearing, that we hear from a miner, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity. And I enjoyed just listening to him a few months ago, and thought you would too. So without any further, Bob, go right ahead.
Well, thank you, appreciate it. I'd like to thank the judge for having me here today to speak to each one of y'all. Which I'm from West Virginia, so it might sound a little different, but to me, I sound normal. So, what's this little handout that I give? Did everyone get one? Okay. Wasn't sure how many to have printed. I'm going to just give you a little bit of highlight of it. This first one, first page is a picture of me back in the early 90s. I'm the second row, the top row standing up, the second one from the right. That's me back then. This is after a day's work, after we come out from the mines. The mines that I worked in, it was probably about 36, 38 inches high, not much higher than this table. That was how high the coal was here at this place. And that picture was also, I went before a Senate hearing here in D.C. to represent the coal miners, and this is a picture I took with me. And the judge, Senator Casey asked me at the end of it, said, which one were you? And I said the second one from the left, the good looking one. But the reason I said that because we was all dirty and you couldn't really tell what a person looked like. So I figured I might get by with it between that and being under oath.
That's Senator Robert Casey, Senator from Pennsylvania.
So, but anyhow, I'll go ahead and get into it. Oh, the second picture, let me go ahead and do that. That is a picture of my lungs, my new lungs. I received those August 1st, it will be 32 months ago that I received these two lungs. They were just going to give me one because I was 61 years old, and anybody that age, they try to do a single lung transplant at that time, but mine were so bad that they gave me two. And the second picture, that's the picture of my good lung that they took out. The other one kind of got messed up during the surgery, so I didn't get a picture of it. And the surgeon, well, she's been at pipe stem twice, and gave a talk, and I found out the first picture of my good lungs, she took that picture the second day, and I thought, you mean you opened me back up just to get the other picture because you forgot to do it the first day? And she said no, but you know, that was just a little joke that we had between us. And what it was is I had to have two surgeries. They done the lungs one day, then through the complications and different things, they had to reopen me and go back in and do a little bit more work, and so that made two surgeries. And plus it ended up really, I had to go to the George Washington University to have a third surgery, and that was a cryothorax surgery because one of my ducts got damaged during the transplant. So I had a lot of trouble with that. So, which I ended up spending 4.5 months in the hospital, which it shouldn't have been but a week or two. But I had other things that went wrong also. But to get on with the story, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. Is it okay if I just sit here?
Sure.
My name's Robert Bailey. I'm from Princeton, West Virginia. I'm a disabled coal miner, and I worked over 36 years in the underground mines. I never was a surface miner or never had the opportunity to work above ground. All my work was underground. I retired in 2009 at the age of 56. I'd planned on working longer, but my health got bad and my breathing really bothered me. And with it bothering me so much, that's something, when it happens to you, it's really you've waited too late. Because once it started affecting you, there's nothing you can do about it. So it was just harder and harder to breathe and harder to do my duties as a coal miner. I was a mine examiner, or fire boss. I don't know if any of y'all know what a fire boss is. It's not what the name implies. Maybe in the beginning it was, because in the beginning a fire boss was a person that went underground who burnt the gas out of the mine faces so the men could work. But then later on, it was the same name, but they changed it. You had to go to school, get your papers, and to be certified, and you was a mine examiner. So you'd go in and you would evaluate a place to see if there were any hazards or dangers that could affect the men as they come to work, and which that's what my job was. And now I've done this job about the last 5 years that I worked. Before then, I was a continuous miner operator. That's a machine that goes in and cuts the coal to send it outside. And also, I spent most of my time as a roof bolter operator. A roof bolter operator is a person who drilled the holes in the roof, put up bolts to hold the roof up to keep it from falling in and hurting people and that sort of thing. So plus you couldn't mine without putting up roof bolts, or you might for a while, but it wouldn't last very long. So in the beginning of my retirement, I found it harder to accept the fact that I was disabled. Some people told me that once I got out of the mines that my breathing would get better. But even doctors that represent coal companies will tell you that it won't get worse. But let me tell you from first-hand experience, with black lung, it doesn't get any better. It only gets worse. Black lung is a lot like cancer. It might go dormant for a while and you can live with it for years. Then sometimes it might progress and get worse quickly. Well, when I first retired, my breathing was bad, but I could still function and get around and do a lot of things. But 2 to 4 years after I retired, it got worse. And that's when I had to take steps to see what I could do to help this. But before I get too much into this, let me go back and tell you a little bit of the story of how all this got started. I graduated from high school in June of '72, and I started in the mines in July of '72 at the age of 19. And as a red hat, which is a trainee, that's a person with no experience, and you have to be taught everything. And hopefully, as you're being taught, you're taught by people who does the job correctly and does it right. If not, you start off your career with bad habits. So, but I was really fortunate. I got a job at a union mines, which they work good together, and they help teach you the correct way to do things for the most part. They're not perfect, but they're better than being taught a lot of the bad things. But I've been not only worked for the union mines and the big mines, which this was the large mines, is Eastern Associated Coal Corporation. They probably had 500-600 employees. But they shut down in '85, and that's when I went to work in these small mines that maybe had 15 people to 35 people. And they were more like family-operated mines, and their systems and plans was a lot different than the bigger mines. Well, one thing, they had a smaller budget to work with, and that sort of thing. But I feel like I've been in the union all my life. My dad, he was a union coal miner. When I was born, I guess the union hospital card paid for my birth. And I was raised. And when I graduated, I got a job in the mines. And then the last mines I worked at was the union mines, and I retired, and which I still am a union member, and I still pay my union dues because it's been good for me. Now, that's because I speak of union doesn't mean that I'm against the coal operator, because I'm not. Because if they don't make money, what's the use of a union? You know, we all have to work together to make this thing work. So, but before I started in the mines, I'd thought about going into the military, but I met someone, and she kind of changed my mind about leaving the area. So that's one reason I went into the mines, and it was a love-hate relationship between me and the mines, not me and my girlfriend. And the reason I say that is because me just being out of high school, not really knowing what I wanted to do as far as a career, I didn't know if I wanted to be a coal miner or not. I didn't know what was expected of me or what the outcome would be. But I went in and I adjusted. Like I said, it was love and hate, and I love it one day and hate it the next. And I've done that for a while, probably, a few months. Then I decided, well, if I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna have to like it a lot better than I like it right now. So I just more or less jumped into it, both feet, and stuck with it, and learned all I could about it. That helped me a lot, just to learn how to mine coal and how to do it right, and make it enjoyable and not a burden. Which now, that doesn't mean it was always easy, because it wasn't. And you'll see a little bit of that as I talk a little bit more about it. And sometimes the mine roof, it would be different heights. And the reason for that would be the seam of the coal. You might have low coal, which would be maybe 2 foot high. It might go up to, well, it could go up to different heights. But what I'm familiar with was either like 2 foot of coal and up to 5 or 6 foot of coal. In which they'd always cut a little bit of rock most of the time to make it either higher or something like that. But if you was lucky, you'd be in coal high enough where you could stand up straight and walk without bumping your head. And sometimes you had to walk with your head bent over because it was just a little bit lower than your height. So you had to walk with your head cranked over all day. And when you first start, a lot of times when you get home, your neck would hurt and it would be stiff, and it takes a little while to work all that out till your body gets adjusted to these conditions. But as you go on, then you might hit a place that's even lower than that, where you just don't bend your head over a little bit. You might have to slump over and bend your back and your shoulders a little bit, where it gets a little bit lower. And if you don't watch, you'll have to bend over far enough, and when you do, you can't see the top that well. And if you run your head into the top, most of the time it will put you on your knees, because you hit a lot harder than what you would think, your head against the top. And then a lot of times, I worked 14 years on my hands and knees where the coal was like 36, 38 inches. And you will learn to walk a little bit in there. And you might even lose a little bit of weight. I know I did. Because when you stayed bent over all the time, it was hard to eat underground because you was always cramped up. Plus, a lot of times it would give you indigestion where you was uncomfortable. Then you think, does it get any lower? Well, it does get lower than that. Like I said, a lot of times you're on your hands and your knees, and you got your head bent over, and you got to hunker down your shoulders to keep from putting your back into the roof, where a piece of rock or a roof bolt would catch you and tear your shirt and scrape your back or something to that effect. But not only when you do that, but a lot of times you have to carry something like a 50-pound bag of rock dust. And that makes it hard to try to crawl and carry something heavy. But after you adjust to the mine heights, you know, like I said, you got the physical labor that comes with it. And a lot of times you're working. Now, this is not just in the face, but there's a lot of out-by work that goes on where you have to do a lot of walking and carrying and dragging. But that's not what all mining is about. It's not just about strength and that sort of thing, but it's got a lot to do with numbers. How wide you can drive a place, how far in you can drive a place, how far the roof bolts go apart, how much velocity you got to have on the air, and just different things, you know, that you got to concentrate on and see that you got to make your place a safe place to work. And then there's things you're faced with. You know, is the roof going to fall in, or is the rib going to roll over, and different things like that. And not to mention a mine explosion, which this is one thing that probably most of y'all hear about is the mines that blows up, like the UBA mines blew up, killed 29. That was the last big disaster that we had, and that was probably about an hour from where I live, which I knew some of the people's families that was in that situation, and none of it's good whether you know them or whether you don't, but things like that happen, and a lot of it, most of it could probably be prevented. And so that's like with me being a fire boss, I could do my job the way I felt like it should be done, but I was struggling to do it. That's the reason I took my retirement, because I had the opportunity to do it, and because I was serious about my work, you know, serious about. It wasn't just me that was going under there. I had to. Part of my job was the safety of 200 or 300 men that came in after me, you know, and I had to be concerned about them, because that would be a hard thing to deal with if you didn't do your job correctly and something happened to them, and then you'd have to live with that the rest of your life. So I didn't want to have to do anything like that. But speaking as you go on, and then you think about black lung. That's probably the least of all the hazards that we think about, because it's something that we don't see right there at the moment. And it has probably killed and still killing more miners than all the other dangers, whether they've been seen or unseen. And speaking of black lung, they have ventilation that brings in fresh air. It takes the dust away from where you're mining the coal, puts it behind the mine curtain, and sends it out to return. And that's where it's supposed to be. And then you have water on your belts, and when you're sending the coal out, and you got water on the equipment as you're mining the coal to dampen it down to get the dust out of the air. And then if that don't do it, we have respirators that we can individually wear. And that should get the remaining dust that the water or the ventilation doesn't get. But they've done found out that doesn't even work as much as it should. So things sound simple, all these things in place, but after the process, the system doesn't work as good as it sounds. When you work in the mines, you always think about the immediate dangers that we face. And I say a lot of times we will say the seen and the unseen dangers. A lot of times we can see the dangers as we go in and examine it orally with our eyes and stuff, but there's a lot of dangers that we can't see. But sometimes we could be there and we'll smell something in the air. It could be a cable that's on fire, and so it's putting off carbon monoxide, and that's a poisonous gas, so it makes us aware of that, and a lot of other different things that comes to our attention. We'll hear a noise off from us, and sometimes we'll know what it is, and without going and seeing it, where we've been there, you know, through our mining experience. And if we know that we don't have no, what you say, buddies over there working, we can go check on it, or we'll go check on it, you know, then if we know there's someone over in that vicinity, make sure they're okay. And I've always said as a miner, it's like being between two rocks and a hard place. And what I mean by that is you got the mine roof, which is rock, and you got the mine floor, which is rock, and you're in between those two things. And plus the equipment that they have is, most of it's made out of heavy steel, and some of it weighs 50 and 60 ton that you're running to mine coal with. And then you have to worry about that catching you against the mine rib if you're not careful, and keep yourself in a safe place. The coal miner or anyone else that goes underground, we're the softest thing there. We're the most vulnerable. because you're not going to hurt that top or the bottom or the rib, or you're not hardly going to hurt that equipment when it slams up against the rib. But let someone get in the way, and it's a different story. So, as we talk about black lung, a lot of times even after you quit work, you're still have the disease. It doesn't go away, and you're dying from the inside out, where it's just squeezing the life right out of you. And what I mean by that, when it's squeezing right out, you get to a place that you just can't get your breath. And when you are getting your breath, it's almost like breathing something that's not there, because you can't tell that it's even helping you. Because you might feel the air go in, but you don't feel any benefits from it, because it's not getting into your blood system, because your lungs are damaged so much from the coal dust that you have breathed. But black lung is a mining disaster in slow motion, taking years for the final results. It won't be made known until the dust is settled. And even right now, they say black lung is on the rise, and its epidemic is larger, much larger than they ever anticipated. Where there at one time back in the 90s, they thought that black lung was becoming a thing of the past. So, which I started, like I said, in '72 and worked to 2009, and I worked through all this time. And I've seen a lot of things happen, and I have my own opinions on things that I consider could have done better and been better, and that, you know, that doesn't mean that they were all right, you know, all my opinions, but I think that there's a lot of things that can be done to help. But in my case, after 36 years of long hours, company management, and job tasks, I ended my career with complicated pneumoconiosis. Complicated pneumoconiosis is when you have spots on your lungs that's 1 centimeter or larger. And I've considered coal mining as a job between a rock and a hard place. When you think things will get better once it's over, then you realize you're in a fight for your life. And really, that's what it amounts to. It's really a fight for your life. That's what it ended up for me. It said, when you retire, you're no benefit to the company that you work for, but a liability. And you mostly become a number that's not recognized as a person who has dedicated their life that has helped make coal companies in this country great. So now your retirement is not a retirement of R&R, rest and relaxation, but it is a life versus death and whatever you have to do to survive. In my case, it was to be evaluated for a lung transplant. And why did I decide to pursue the lung transplant? There's a lot of coal miners that retire that have black lung, and to be honest with you, it's bad, but it's not intolerable. It's you can still live with it. You can still function. You can still do things. I mean, you can hunt, fish, play with your grandkids. Now, this is some that doesn't have it severely. Then you have those. When I first retired, I could do a lot of things, a lot of those things. I could run with my grandkids and that sort of thing, and then I got to the place where I couldn't hardly walk with them. And you would think, you know, well, I'm not working, I'm out of the mines, I'm not in any dust, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't progress. It does progress, and it's like I said, it's like cancer. Sometimes it would go dormant and not affect you for years or maybe the rest of your life, but then sometimes it comes out of that state and it progresses rapidly. And that's what mine did. When I first retired, I could still breathe on my own without the help of an oxygen tank, and hoses draping around and going in my nose. But after 2 to 4 years, my breathing changed drastically. It almost seemed like it was an overnight change. You know, like you breathe pretty good today, then tomorrow you wake up and you wonder what happened. You know, things is not the same. And being a person who had already ever been hospitalized, I started being admitted to the hospital probably about 5 times a year, anywhere from 3 to 9 days each time. They would give me steroids and antibiotics, antibiotics for the infection in my lungs, steroids to help open up my blood flow, and plus they'd give me breathing treatments, and they'd get me where I could function pretty good and walk out of the hospital and go back home and do whatever I could until a month or a couple months later, and it would hit me again, and I'd have to go back and go through the same thing again and again. So like I said, the last few years before my transplant, that's what my life consisted of. And which that's not to mention the 15 or 20 pills that I'm on today for the disease. And that's not just through Monday through Friday. You got to do it Saturday and Sunday too. So it's a 7-day thing, 24 hours a day thing. And so I talked to my lung doctor from Princeton, and he got me an evaluation appointment at the Nova Hospital right here in Fairfax. That's where I had my surgery done. So I wasn't too far from here. And as a matter of fact, I'm up here now I have an appointment tomorrow just for a checkup. So, and like I said, it's been almost 32 months since the surgery. I received my disabled Social Security on pneumoconiosis. I received my feral black lung. I was turned down the first time. And the first time, this story on the front page that I gave you is about a Dr. Wheeler from the John Hopkins Hospital. He's the one that examined one of my x-rays as I was trying to get my black lung, and which he said I didn't have black lung. And after that fact, I went to a doctor and I told him, I said, they say I have a bird disease, I have cancer, carcinosis, this, that, or the other. I said, I need to know what I've got. So if there's any help that I can get, I can go ahead and get it and not worry about this black lung stuff. So I had a biopsy done. A doctor by the name of Dr. Miller, he done a biopsy. He said he had 2 different needles, a small one and a larger one, which he used the large one on me. He took 3 samples. They don't put you to sleep to do it. They make you lay down on the table on your stomach, and they stick the needle in your back. They numb the outside of your back, and then they stick a needle in your back, penetrates your lung, and they bring out 3 samples. And he said after they examined it, 2 of the samples was mostly black, but it was coal dust, coal dirt. So, which I appealed my black lung where they turned me down from Dr. Wheeler. There's a doctor here, Rasmussen's. He's passed away now. He's the one who gave me my exam for black lung, and he said that I had it, and which it has been proved that I've had it. Now after going through that, but my insurance that I had, I thought that, well, I've done got 2 approvals. I mean, Social Security black lung, federal black lung approved. I've got black lung insurance that the coal company, Patriot Coal, provided. It was underwriter's insurance. And I said, you know, there shouldn't be any problem, because they're responsible to pay for any lung treatments. Well, when I was going to go see him about an evaluation, they denied my appointment. They didn't want me to go. And then after talking to them, I finally got the approval for one-time evaluation. So I went and was out, had my eval, and they determined that I needed a lung transplant. So they went ahead and set me up a second appointment. I notified the insurance. Insurance denied my second appointment. They wouldn't approve it. They needed more time to go through some more paperwork. And they admitted that I had a lung problem, but they didn't want to admit that it was black lung causing my problem. So during this time, they was getting ready to have a meeting at Pipestem. It was a black lung conference, and I really felt that I needed to be there, and which I didn't have an invitation, but it was open to all coal miners, but I wasn't for sure how that worked. So I just went there early that morning and just asked if I could sit in, and they signed me up and let me come on in. So as I was sitting there listening to the speakers speak, all of them from different states, different areas, a lot of them from D.C., Department of Labor. Judge Leslie was there, Judge Bob was there, and several of them, several other people, they were there. So that's where I've become to know them. And our host, one of the speakers was getting ready to close, and our host got up after he closed and said that they had someone here that was going to speak. It wasn't on the list, and that they didn't even know they was going to speak. And I just had thought, well, they need a coal miner up there to speak, and then he called my name. And I said, Lord, this is not what I meant. So, and as I got up and walked up there, I walked by him. He said, just tell your story. I said, okay. So I started telling my story about how it was all my wife's fault. I couldn't blame her for any of that. So, but anyhow, I went up there and told my story, and that's when I had a reporter. She put my story on the internet. She also called the insurance company. She said, do you mind if I call the insurance company and ask them why they won't approve it? I said, do whatever you want to. And so she called them. She even called the co-operator in Charleston and wanted to know why the insurance company wouldn't do it. And none of them didn't really want to talk to her. So as a matter of fact, she said some of them got pretty hateful. I think the insurance did. Told her that they couldn't tell her anyway because, they won't give out personal information, whether they have your permission or not most of the time. So between that and some attorneys and the UMWA was there, they got involved, and like I said, they rescheduled my second appointment, and I was on my way to the hospital when the hospital called me and said, are you on your way up here for your tomorrow's appointment? And I said, yes. It was already about an hour and a half. It's a little bit over 300 miles from our home to the hospital. We usually come the day before. And then she said, okay, and she hung up on me. That was the hospital. She called me back about an hour later and said, we just got your approval for tomorrow's appointment. So, which I thought, well, that's great. I told my wife, I said, I don't know who's going to pay for this thing, this appointment, And but we was on our way because we hadn't heard that there was or that there wasn't. So I guess the Lord answered that prayer on our way. But we got up there and we had our second appointment, and they went ahead and approved the future appointments. but they wanted to be up to date on everything, which that's good, that's understandable, and I was glad for that. So, but like I said, without the people that I had met at the Black Lung Conference, the people that got involved, so it's like all y'all here. Y'all hearing their story. Now this is my story, but I really and truthfully, I represent hundreds of miners that is in the same situation that I'm in. There's been a lot of them passed away that as far as been on the list for a transplant. Gary Fox is one of them. He was on the list for a transplant, but he didn't make it to receive one. I was on the list 14 months. And there was times I didn't know if I was going to make it till the transplant time. Which they won't do your transplant if in their eyes you have several years to live. They only do it if your time and your lungs are about exhausted. Then that's when they will try to do your transplant. That's the way it's set up. It's not to take away your life, but to add to your life. And which it has, like I said, 32 months. I figured it's done added at least 2 years or better to my life. Without it, I wouldn't be here. I haven't, well, I have, but I don't wear the oxygen tube no more. I can lay down flat in my bed and sleep. The last month before my transplant, I had to sit in a recliner with oxygen on and still struggle to breathe, still struggle to sleep, to rest. It's really wasn't much of a life. And when you get to that point, you're ready to go either for a transplant or you're just ready to go to wherever God sends you. So, but then it said, would I recommend a coal miner for a transplant? Which, like I said, it's not for everybody. It's only for those who don't have any life left, and you know, and still wants to do something with their life. Which, you know, I want to do something with my life, and hopefully it's to help somebody. Which it doesn't have to be a coal miner; it can be anybody. I give out food at our church. We do it once a month. We go over and pack food for them once a week. I'm involved in that. I was involved with it when I first retired, and I had to drop out of it for a while because I wasn't able to take care of myself. But now I'm back doing that. So as a matter of fact, this Saturday here they give out food. They probably will feed 300 or 400 families this Saturday. I plan on being there for that. So, but like I said, the transplant's not for all people with black lung, because a lot of times we can still function good. My dad, he has black lung. He's 87 years old. He doesn't wear oxygen. He doesn't need a transplant. So, like I said, it's not for everybody. I was just one that got that bad, which I was fortunate enough that I received one and stuff. And as far as the quality of life, I can't do everything that I want to do, but I can do a great deal more than I could before the transplant. And it took me a long time to recover because I had a lot of things that came against me, several different surgeries. I was on life support 3 different times during the 4.5 months. I had a PICC line in my left arm, and got a blood infection from it. They had put me on life support for that. They called my family in on Valentine's Day of 2015. They didn't know if I was going to make it or not, but after 3, 4, 5 days, I don't really know how many days I was on life support. The only thing I know is 3 times I was on it, 3 times when I woke up, my wife was there leaning over me praying. And she's still here with me today, so after 45 years. So that's one thing that lasted. since '72. So he hasn't given up on me yet. He's been my main supporter. And if anyone has any questions, but before you do ask them, you can't hardly do this without mentioning the donor families. The new lungs that I've got, I don't know where they come from, who they come from, don't have any history on them. It's up to the donor whether or not they want to let the recipients know, and I've never been told, so I guess I did write them a letter and expressing my sincere thanks. But we have to remember those families that lost loved ones and the things that they have went through to make this gift of life possible for people like me. So, if anyone has any questions about black lung, lung transplants, or coal mining, I'll do my best to answer.
Do you still have to, well, do miners still have to crawl through like you were mentioning now, or has there been any improvements with that? You know, when you talk about having to mine on hands and knees and that, is it still the same way?
Well, they still have what they call low coal, and that's the only way to get in it is, I mean, you might ride a piece of equipment in there. What we rode in what's called a man trip, but you laid long ways, you laid down flat, and hopefully you didn't rub the top as you went in. And if you got off, and some of the equipment that you does have seats on them where you can ride them, like the Hall's coal, which I was a roof boulder. It doesn't have a seat on it, so you have to crawl around the side of it to operate it. So yeah, you still work on your hands and knees if the coal is low enough. Yeah, and which in today's time, coal seams are smaller, and a lot of times you'll have a seam of coal 2 foot. You might have 3 foot of rock and another 18 inches of coal. They'll go ahead and they'll cut all that rock to combine the 2 seams together, in which the rock makes it more dustier, more harmful to your lungs. That's which I have a lot of rock dust in my old lungs. As far as I know, I don't have anything in these lungs. So they're functioning well for me, and they've been a blessing to me.
You mentioned that many mine operators will provide some sort of air filtration system to miners, but you also mentioned that they're not wholly effective. Is that because the coal dust particulates are too small and they still get into filtration, or is that because not all the miners are wearing them, or a combination of both?
Probably both. It's some of the respirators have been proven to work when they test them in where they make them at, but once they send them out into the mines, that they're not as functional as they thought that they were, from my understanding that I've been told. They do help tremendously, and I still recommend using them. They might not get it there, all of it, but they'll still get most of it. Which I blame most mine condition on small mines, their mining practices that weren't quite up to standards as the larger mines and stuff. But and people do have options on whether to wear them or not to wear them. Some companies enforce, some don't.
State.
So the doctor here, the Johns Hopkins doctor, Dr. Paul S. Wheeler, did he also review your case?
Yes, he did. I didn't know that till I went to the Senate hearing, and I heard something that they said, and I went back and dug up my papers, and his name was on my papers where he examined them, and they had told me also at the Senate meeting that he examined my case.
And determined that you did not have black lung.
Right.
Did they ever find out why or how it is he came to this determination in so many cases?
Only thing I know is that they stopped the black lung program at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. They don't do it anymore. They were invited to the meeting. They declined and didn't send no representation, and which the reason he outwon the doctor that I had. The doctor I had was Rasmussen's. He had been in this for years and years. He called him the pioneer of black lung disease, and he's the one I went to. He's the one my dad went to back in his day, and which he just passed away about 2-3 years ago. And Dr. Wheeler, he graduated from Harvard. He carried more weight, is the reason they give him more than what they give the doctor who examined me.
Judge McCracken?
Eastern Associated Coal Corporation worked with them until '85 when it was shut down. Was that the unionized mine that you were talking about?
Yeah, they
or
were.
Did you work at more than one unionized mine when you went to smaller mines?
Yes, I did.
And were they United Mine Workers?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Was there any? Did you ever work at a small non-unionized mine where there was an effort to organize a mine?
No, all the mines that I worked at were UMW operated. There was one I worked at who all the members or all the workers weren't UMWA workers, only a percentage of them, which I never could understand how they determined that factor. But they were all unionized.
Did you ever experience a fight to decertify the unions in the mines?
Not personally, no.
I just have one question for Judge Caldwell or the clerks generally. Do you know if it's possible to bring a class action for black lung, or is it too individualized, and have you any experience with that issue?
That's a good question, but I've never heard of a class action ever been tried, so I've never heard that it was ever denied. I mean, we always have, they're all individual cases. I mean, I would be surprised if sometimes people might get together and try to knock it, but I've never heard. Alex, have you ever heard of a?
Never heard of that.
Never heard of a, that's a good question. I've never heard of a class action.
Well, I'm just wondering why you couldn't bring a class action. Of course, there's been a lot of push to limit class actions, but on more generalized issues concerning black lung, why you couldn't have a whole class that would be encompassed if you had a strategic litigator who put it before the appropriate forum.
You might be able to try it. For black lung, it's individual, the medical information is so specific that we're looking at each individual at a time. I'm not sure how a class could be handled.
There's also with it, because the regulations differ, it's not just pneumoconiosis or the traditional black lung, it can be all sorts of different things. It can be emphysema, other forms of COPD, and because, I mean, when you think of it, because it's very much like smoking a lot of times in the effect that you think, well, smoking class actions did exist. But I guess it's just the way that the medical science is handled with it. It must be more efficient, at least it seems at the moment, more efficient to handle it case by case.
I think good answer. Good.
Well, I think it's more efficient to handle case by case from the operator's perspective, or from perhaps somebody like Dr. Wheeler's perspective. I wonder what you think, Dr. Wheeler, or Mr. Wheeler.
Well, how I think on
how you think, well, for example, this gentleman said that emphysema, COPD, oftentimes there's certain distinctions drawn between black lung, and you can't classify everything as black lung, and I think that's arguments that I've heard, or defenses that are thrown up, even where there's strong cases of black lung, in order to find that we're not liable, or we're going to deny payments, or we're going to delay payments, or eventually we may get around to paying them, but you know, we're going to forestall liability. And I'm wondering what you think about, oh, well, it could be emphysema, it could be COPD. Are they different from black lung? I mean, what's your experience with defenses that are thrown up that this isn't really black lung, it's attributable to other causes, smoking, emphysema, COPD, and we can get a doctor to substantiate that?
Well, if you're a smoker and a coal miner, things is going to affect you probably quicker because it's two things going together. And a lot of times, which I've been told that they've proven that a lot of times cancer and black lung may help it to develop because of your black lung, because of your already existing condition, emphysema, you know, or a lot of times when I go to the doctor, they'll just say COPD, even though I had a complicated black lung. They wouldn't use that or pneumoconiosis. They just say COPD is like something lighter and just pushing the other thing to the side, even though I've already been determined my condition. Yeah.
For those of you who don't understand, that the etiology is if you inhale coal dust, the lung can't expel the fine particles, so they stay, and then the lungs wall it off with scar tissue. And the more scar tissue, the less tissue there is to transmit oxygen or carbon dioxide. So you end up with dysfunctional lungs. If you have emphysema and other things, you're destroying lung tissue. So it may have the same effect in marginal cases. Generally, as it progresses, you can distinguish them. We don't see cases like Bob Bailey. Usually, if you're trying a case, you see the marginal cases where you can't tell. You can get a biopsy, but that's invasive, and you're not required to get it. There can't be any inference if a miner refuses to get a biopsy. You can die from a biopsy infection. And so progresses, as that progresses, there's more to be seen. Autopsies generally can confirm it, because then they know for sure whether it's emphysema or it's pneumoconiosis or silicosis, which legally is still considered black lung. Mr. Bailey mentioned that black lung's on the rise. There's a lot of studies, many studies going on, a lot of analysis going on to determine why. One theory is they're finer particles. Another is that there are miners are working longer hours. Another is that as the newer machines cut into the roof more and the floor more, you're not cutting into the soft coal, which was always the case in pick and shovel mining. Now you're cutting into sandstone, which gives you silicosis, which could be even have a shorter latency and even more damage than coal dust. And you can, I think in the Hawk's Nest disasters back in when they were digging a tunnel for a power plant in West Virginia and Hawk's Nest back in the 30s, they had miners dying within months because of silicosis. They don't know how many died because many were ex-slaves. There was no documentation they ever existed, let alone that they died. So it was several thousand, perhaps, maybe more. Noah asked a question about respirators. I think the decision was made back in decades ago, 68 or 9. 9 was the Coal Act, where they first addressed black lung. I think, well, actually, West Virginia addressed it first. We have a picture out there, you go out and turn right, of a demonstration in Charleston, West Virginia that brought about the West Virginia Coal Act. As I recall, there were more miners at that demonstration in Charleston, West Virginia than there were citizens of Charleston. And that led to the State Act and then eventually the Coal Act. But there was a decision made by MSHA and Mine Safety and Health Administration and NIOSH that it was a better way to stop the exposure was to remove it from the air. So ventilation programs were the key way. And in regard to personal respirators, most miners have said they're extremely uncomfortable. They don't want to wear them. They don't want to rely on the individual miners doing that. If any of you have ever had to wear a respirator from Home Depot, whether you're doing insulation in your attic or any woodworking, you know that not only are they uncomfortable, but they grind in whatever dust there is to where they touch your skin. And if it's hot and in the 80s, not that it gets that way in Virginia, it is extremely uncomfortable. And so I have my son next to me all the time saying, "Dad, would you please put on that mask?" And I just chuckle, ignore him. But at any rate, not as bad as coal dust, I have to tell you. You know, I never tell anecdotes, right, Tom?
Never.
No. But I have to tell one here. Dr. Rasmussen, it was around a long time. In the early 80s, 35 years ago, I represented the solicitor. I defended the decision of the commissioner, whether it was to pay or not to pay. And on one occasion, I was questioning Dr. Rasmussen. I did not know who he was, really. As I'm questioning him, Judge Anastasia Dunow stopped me and said, "Young man," I was then, "young man, do you know who you're questioning?" "No, Your Honor, I thought it was Dr. Rasmussen, but I've got the feeling you're going to tell me it's somebody else." And she says, "You're questioning Dr. Black Lung." Well, Your Honor, should I continue? Well, they won't do much good, but go right ahead. So, anyway, Judge Dunow, we had a nickname for her, but I won't say that on tape. She was a fine lady. But anyway, more questions. Tom?
Were you aware of the criminal indictments handed down against 8 people in the last couple of weeks at Armstrong?
No.
Well, then I'll announce it to you.
Okay.
It was in Kentucky, 2 Kentucky mines run by Armstrong Coal, which is now bankrupt. They've handed down 8 indictments against people for falsifying dust sampling. So, I mean, it strikes me that's the kind of thing you need, is better enforcement of that sort of thing. They have been criminally indicted, so they're facing some pretty stiff action that's being taken against them. On respirators, I did this from the operator's perspective. I was an operator's lawyer back in the 90s, and I did most of my work out west in Utah and Colorado. And they didn't use respirators, they used an Airstream helmet. Are you familiar with Airstream helmets?
Never been around one.
Yeah, the miners out there really preferred them, and it would reduce your dust exposure dramatically. And I've never seen them take off, and I've always wondered why an Airstream helmet didn't work, because it actually, you wear a faceplate, and through a little pump in the top of the helmet, it creates positive pressure under that faceplate. Would reduce your dust exposure phenomenally. So I don't know why it hasn't taken off. Maybe because it's too expensive. I don't know.
I'd say that's got a lot to do with it, which I personally think that there's plenty of laws that's already in place. It's just this object of them being held up to the standard.
You just have to enforce them.
Were those underground coal mines out west or surface mines?
Underground coal.
I mean, I can see the Airstream in the surface, but underground.
Longwell operations too, so a lot of dust. They were very dusty mines.
Judge Bill Caldwell?
Have you just asked, you said you were awarded Black Lung, do you recall the hearing that you had, who represented you? Do you remember that experience?
Judge Leffler, he was my attorney from Black Lung. Judge Pamela Lake is the one that I went to in Princeton.
A retired judge from labor?
The last thing I'll say is that at that same conference, they had a panel of 8 miners, and many of the miners talked about how if the inspectors were coming, they had to change the way they were wearing their mask and everything else. When the inspectors left, they had to put stuff down. They said, we knew this was dangerous, but we had to have this job, so we knew.
Romana?
You mentioned, well, how long did it take
for your black lung to get acknowledged so that you could get properly treated? And is that typical, or was your case accelerated because you received, a spotlight on your case?
The first time that I was diagnosed with black lung, or that I had coal dust on my x-rays, was back in '84. That was the first time.
So many of us grew up in communities where we wouldn't have probably known a single person who mined coal or knew anybody else who did that, but in the community where you grew up or where you graduated from high school, when you were going into the mines, was it fairly common for people and accepted in the community for people to just go right into mining coal? Were there any people that had reservations about it? What was that like in that decision?
Well, where I graduated at was in Norfolk, West Virginia. There were coal mines in all directions from the school. And let me say it like this. Back in the 80s, middle 80s, McDowell County, just say they had 10,000 coal miners. The larger mines started shutting down, and they ended up with about 1,000. So there's about 9,000 or 90% lost their jobs. That's how it was cut as far as the coal mining in the middle 80s. But in the early 70s when I started, it was a whole lot more than that. And that was the common job. Anywhere you went in that area, that was the common job. And it was probably the best paying job, which when I started, I made $38 and something a day. That's when I started. And that was back in '72. Which that was just $5 and something an hour.
Yes.
I have a question. Just when because you received an examination, a pulmonary examination from the Department of Labor through Dr. Rasmussen, from what you said. Did you also have to get examined by the employer, and do you recall at all how the examinations were different? Because that's something I've always wondered about, is Dr. Rasmussen was always, like, as you said, the king of doing them. And I always wondered how they differed between.
I know Dr. Rasmussen's he'd ask you 100 questions, okay? And he wanted to know everything in detail. And when they done the blood gas, they put you on a treadmill, they hooked you up, and you even had valves on you where he would turn to get the blood, turn to shut it off during your exam. That's the only one I've ever had done that way. Which he told me, he said, now if you go to another doctor and they do a blood gas and you exercise first, and if they stop you from exercising, and if they wait a minute, your levels went back to normal range, and you'll fail, it won't show you true results. So he cautioned me on that, in which the company did send me to another attorney, and it's on paper. He agreed with Dr. Wheeler that I didn't have anything, which he represented the company. I'm not saying the company bought him off or whatever. I don't like to accuse people of things. It's just some people you deal with, you learn not to trust or try to avoid them, and that was one of them.
Yes.
So I'm kind of wondering about, after your retirement, you have all these treatments that you're going through and the cost of everything, basically. So the black lung benefits that the government provides cover part of that, and the insurance that you're getting from the private company covers part of that. I'm wondering kind of what the percentage is of how much each of those things cover, and how prevalent kind of black lung insurance provided by the company is. Is that something that's everywhere, or is that just something from one of the mines that you work on?
Well, I hope I answered your question the way you want me to. I had Patriot Coals. They furnished my insurance through underwriters. Underwriters were very strict on things they would want me to do. Like I said, they didn't even want me to be having an evaluation. Then they didn't want to admit that it was black lung was the reason I needed to have more evaluation. And that sort of thing. And which now they then went bankrupt once during this time period. Then they went bankrupt the second time. And the second time, believe this or not, it became final November the 30th of 2015, Patriot Coal Insurance. Federal Black Lung had notified me that week that they would step in and cover me 1st of December. November the 30th, they called me for a transplant. I had my transplant December the 1st, the same day that the federal Black Lung Insurance took place. So the only thing, I would say the only trouble I've had with them is, not really trouble, is a lot of times the medications that are prescribed for me, it's not on their agenda for the transplant people. And I would have to get the doctors to write them and stuff and try to get them approved, and which I've been very successful about doing that, because like I said, different people require different measures of treatment, and mine was more severe. Like I said, I had 3 surgeries. I was on life support 3 times. I met a guy at the Black Lung Conference. He had double lung transplant. He said he was in the hospital 7 days. Got out. I was in there 4.5 months, and it seemed like I barely got out. So, but I finally made it, and it took me a long time to get where I'm at now. It was 2 years that I hurt every day. Every day I was in pain. But finally the pain has let up, say, in the last 6 months. So I can breathe now, and I don't feel pain, you know. It's mostly my ribs, which I still have some problems with fluid getting around my lungs. As a matter of fact, I have a little bit now, and which to me it's not causing me any problems, you know. But just take it one day at a time. That's all we got anyway, and just try to make the most of it, and hopefully I can help somebody.
Yes.
Just a follow-up to my earlier question.
Judge Leslie, this is Judge Syed.
Yes, Alan. Go right ahead, Alan.
Wait, thank you. Mr. Bailey, I just want to thank you very, very much for your story. It's absolutely incredible. When I first was employed with the federal government, I worked for the Department of Labor, and I handled black lung benefits cases on appeal as well as at the trial level. As you say, Dr. Rasmussen was the gold standard. His reports were very detailed. They pointed to all the evidence with regard to the pulmonary function studies and the arterial blood gas studies. You're bringing back a flood of memories for me, talking about your story. And the fact that you had complicated pneumoconiosis, those were so rare, those types of cases. And the fact that you survived the disease is absolutely amazing. I did want to ask, I've been down to Princeton. Interestingly enough, my first mine safety and health case was in Princeton, West Virginia. So I know your area. But I was curious if you still have relatives or friends that are in the mine. And if you do, what advice would you give them?
Well, I do still have some. Most of them are out of the mines now. Most of them are disabled, unfortunately, but it seems like it's hard to just retire as a coal miner and not be disabled. Seems like it just more naturally comes with the job. My advice would be to look at this thing in a long-term way, not as a short-term. And the things that you do, to try to do it as proper and correctly as possible, because you're the one that's going to have to live with any things that happens, whether it would be short-term or long-term.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Question from the back?
That was going to be my question.
To follow up on your earlier question, where Bob grew up, it was primarily coal mining was the employer for everybody. Generally, the companies would, at least from the 1800s on, build a town around the mine within walking distance. So if you watched Molly McGuire's, where I grew up, people would just get up in the morning and walk to the mine. And so naturally, that was sometimes the only employer, generally the only employer. And the only other business would be the company store that gave you food and clothing, occasionally a gas station, but rarely anything else, maybe a speakeasy, but that was it. When I was in college, I worked at the Fayette County Development Council, read economic studies that pointed out that that money from the mining was accountable for 95% of all business in the county. And a more recent example, people have said there are only 70,000 miners left. That doesn't count the other people in related industries, but that there were more than 70,000 people who worked at Walmarts. Well, that's accurate, but in McDowell County, for instance, in West Virginia, when the coal mine shut down, the Walmart shut down because there simply was no income or no money that moved around. And in those areas, if you want to work and stay there, you're going to generally look to the coal mine, and it paid well, and you know the risk you're taking. Or you leave. You go to the military, or you just go somewhere, but you don't stay. Now, if you're going to go and you're middle age, you're going to sell a house worth about a 50th of what a house would be in any city. So you're not just going to pick up and go and have an equivalent life. And that's so that there are a lot of reasons why people don't move away, even if they know that this isn't exactly the healthiest job, safest job. Anyway, and more questions? Well, that's good. I appreciate, Mr. Bailey, you taking the questions. I know at prior time we listened to you, there were speakers right after, and they were rushing everybody through, and I know a lot of people wanted to talk with you then. And I want to thank you all for coming. This is a huge crowd, and I thank you. Our connection, of course, at this agency is ventilation, dust control, things of that nature. Over at the Department of OALJ, it's black lung, and that's your tie to this. So we see different parts of the effects of the industry and what goes on. So anything else, Bob, you want to say?
Now, the only thing I can think of is where you were talking a while ago about the coal mining. I'm originally from McDowell County, where I lived at most of my life. It was the richest county in the state of West Virginia, and back in the heyday, I guess you might say. And there was lots of employment. Like I said, it was the richest county in the state. Now it's considered, they call it the county now, and they don't mean that in good terms. It's probably the poorest county now. Or it was, I guess, mismanaged, and plus, like I said, the industry has dwindled down, and it's not as much mining there now. Most of it's done mined out. They still do mine there, but things changed a lot. But I appreciate it that I had this opportunity, and I hope that I have said something that will help you see the life that a coal miner lives, and the things that we are faced with, which I'm sure we all have things in our life that we're faced with that things can be done to make life more better for each one of us. But I do thank you and appreciate each one of y'all.
Thank you.
It's not often I give someone the last word.
I need a copy of that policy.
Oh, okay.
Well, my grandfather was a miner.
Was he?
Yeah, down in Alabama.
It might be higher risk if you are black lung
No, wait, I got right up to there and then they told us we were about to be upstream and they said no. They said we wouldn't get through the process in time with the locker and all that. So that's right. It's funny, quite often I let someone else have the word. I could have added it to my
Yeah.
yeah.
I can't believe that your friend got out in
The
9
richest,
days.
third richest in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I
behind
came here, which I just met him at
But
Pipeline
a county
Conference.
with no major
I'll
cities.
be honest with you,
Richest.
that's the first time I met him.
Ford came
And
in
I've
and
met
Mount
one
Summit
more
and Clayton
coal
County
miner
said
that's
at
had
a
another
meeting
one.
with Firestone and
That's all.
Carnegie. I'm gonna build a pilot plant.
Is it because
There's all
it's
the
rare, or is it because they're not
It's the
getting
third most populous county too.
insurance?
And Carnegie said,
Well,
no, you're not, those are my workers.
There's a lot of people that don't even know they do lung transplants, believe it or not.
And but just as he
It's-
said, and now.
I'm really surprised
in
that,
Pennsylvania,
I mean, I've had
they
conversations, you really,
some decades
you
ago.
give lung transplants now?
Lowest 1%
You know,
of the
that,
country.
that just don't know
And
this
that's so
stuff.
much of that.
I've heard there's no.
Although I was
You
bored.
know, I've even had medical people tell me things that would surprise me.
Well, that's what we hear. I was on
Our job is to get business development, no one moves to Appalachia. Isn't that great?
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
And then you have to fight to get treatment.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. I had to fight for my insurance to pay for what I was supposed to receive.
It's definitely true that
I had to fight to get my black.
because I mean you can
Just
win.
because of like Dr. Whittler, that, you know, had more weight than Dr.
From what they
Resnick.
say, because even the old
But
friends
I wouldn't have been examined fairly.
Called up.
And you fought
is that you can't
on your own behalf,
request
did anyone
fees.
help you?
You will.
It's only
No,
based on-
when I went to the Black Lung Conference, I had a reporter.
Oh, yeah.
If you'll write this down, this
At least he
is
was ready.
public broadcast or West Virginia Public broadcast. Robert Bailey. My name's come up, 5 or 6 stories that come up. Or put Robert Bailey Black Lung, just type that in on the internet and some stories will come up.
You know, because I think it's very hard for people who are not in the legal field to go after, you know, to go up against experts and get acknowledged. It's very intimidating.
That's the reason, like, something right here, people that goes out of this office carries that weight that can open up the next
Go
door
out of the picture.
where I can't
gotta get
go.
the, so
Say, well, we already recommended.
I hope that.
It's not a trust
take some
fund.
people out to lunch. Thanks a lot. That was,
Appreciate it.
thanks, thanks, Bill.
Ramona, nice to meet you. You know,
Thanks,
it's
that's
credit
great.
to
We're
you and
headed,
your
that was
family.
fantastic. Getting to get the superstar here. Now I know why you're doing so well.
Again, people will tell you.
You guys are going to lunch, where you going?
Well, I know I had to fight to get where I'm at, but he gave me a quality of life.
13, we're gonna.
And I hope that through my fight, make someone else,
No, but I am gonna take
they
Bob.
won't have to fight as hard, that they'll receive it a lot more easier than what I had to do to get mine.
Are you finding that true?
Well, I don't know anybody that's had it yet, so,
Okay.
but
Well,
I hope
really,
so.
it's a credit to you for standing up and going after it and not getting tired after years of getting denied. You know, that it's, I can't imagine. Well, I can, but it's.
It took me 44 months to get my federal black line. And a lot of people I know, they've been doing it for 10, 15 years and still haven't got it. Which, to me, black lung is
$35,000
transplant, or I said it's not for everybody.
The phone hasn't exploded.
Benefits is not for everybody.
I love it.
It all depends on what degree of sickness that
We're
you're
still
at.
recording.
You know what I mean? Which is, believe me, if they deserve it, I want them to have it. You know, it's not that we want something that we don't deserve.